Aspartame. This had become a household word associated with our favorite carbonated beverages when considering sugar-free options. Currently, aspartame is used in over 90 countries worldwide in over 6,000 products. Aspartame is considered to be around 200 times sweeter than sugar, but has roughly the same number of calories by weight, which is around 4 calories per gram. This difference in potency allows aspartame to be a popular low-calorie substitute for sugar as it requires 200 times less substance by weight in food products to achieve the same level of sweetness present in its sugar-containing counterpart. Since its inception, aspartame has maintained its prevalence in the artificial sweetener industry, with the intended use upon creation being vastly different from its current use. Aspartame is a methyl ester of a dipeptide composed of aspartic acid and phenylalanine, and was created by accident in 1965 by James Schlater. In his work trying to synthesize a tetrapeptide to be used as an inhibitor of the gastrointestinal secretory hormone gastrin, he attempted to crystallize aspartyl phenylalanine methyl ester and accidentally spilled some on his hand. Upon licking his finger to pick up a piece of paper, James noticed this intense sweet taste, prompting future researchers, Cloninger and Baldwin in 1970 to further study aspartame and recommend its use as an artificial sweetener. As discussed previously, aspartame in its use as an artificial sweetener is exposed to humans in food products, making the main route of exposure ingestion. Once ingested, aspartame quickly metabolizes in the small intestine into its constituents aspartic acid, phenylalanine, and methanol. Extensive studies have been conducted on both animals and humans, with animals showing similar metabolic effects to humans in relation to aspartame ingestion. Studies in animals show that once aspartame was hydrolyzed to aspartic acid, phenylalanine, and methanol, aspartic acid is further metabolized in the small intestine, while phenylalanine is primarily metabolized in the liver along with methanol, which oxidizes into formaldehyde, which only has a half-life of about 1.5 minutes, so it poses little threat of bioaccumulation. Studies completed in animals, including pigs, rats, rabbits, dogs, monkeys, and humans, showed digestion and metabolism to occur very similarly, with some studies showing small differences, such as one study in monkeys showing a slightly faster metabolism of phenylalanine than shown in human studies. Another study in mice evaluated the ability of mice of different ages to metabolize aspartate, and the results showed higher levels of aspartate in younger mice than older mice when given the same quantity. In all species, aspartame is hydrolyzed prior to entering the bloodstream. There is no distribution of aspartame outside of the gastrointestinal tract, and since aspartame is generally fully metabolized, its constituents are primarily excreted through urine between 24 and 72 hours roughly. It is worth noting that the phenylalanine constituent of aspartame could have potentially harmful effects to humans with a rare disorder called phenylketonuria, or PKU, which allows for the accumulation of phenylalanine in the body, causing neurological abnormalities, developmental disorders, and seizures. This exemplifies the importance of the metabolism of aspartame in the ADME process, as the readiness to metabolize is what makes aspartame safe to consume under the acceptable daily intake of 40 milligrams per kilogram. The half-life of aspartame varies depending on the pH of the solution it is dissolved in, with solutions with a pH of 4 to 5 exhibiting the longest half-life of up to 300 days, with a correlation also being present between a decrease in half-life with an increase in temperature. This value changes dramatically when viewed from a human digestive and metabolic perspective, with studies showing half-life in humans of only around 3.5 hours. Biomonitoring of aspartame within the body is primarily carried out through sampling in the small intestine and the liver, as these organs are the primary metabolizing locations of aspartame's constituents. As aspartame is readily metabolized, there is generally no way of monitoring aspartame concentration through excretory functions.
Now we will dive into the toxic effects of aspartame. In general, the acute consumption of aspartame within the acceptable daily intake levels is considered safe for the general population. Health Canada regulate ADI of aspartame is 40 mg per kilogram of body weight per day. For a 70 kilogram adult, the ADI would be 2800 milligrams a day. That is around 2.8 grams. One can of diet soda contains around 200 milligrams of aspartame. So a 70 kilogram adult would need to consume 14 cans per day to reach the ADI limit. ADI is a conservative estimate that includes safety factors. Occasional consumption above the ADI does not automatically mean toxicity will occur, but regular long-term intake above the ADI may increase health risks. However, individuals with phenylketonuria or PKU, a rare genetic disorder affecting phenylalanine metabolism in the body, must avoid aspartame due to the risk of elevated phenylalanine levels, which can lead to neurological complications. Dangerously high blood concentrations of phenylalanine can cause severe brain damage, delay growth, intellectual disability, and problems with the transport of other amino acids to the brain. In terms of chronic exposure, regulatory agencies including Health Canada and the European Food Safety Authority (EFSA) have reviewed many studies and concluded that aspartame is safe for human consumption at the current exposure levels. However, some studies have suggested potential associations between aspartame consumption and the adverse health outcomes such as carcinogenicity, cardiovascular effects, neurological effects, and metabolic effects. A 2023 evaluation by the International Agency for Research on Cancer, or the IARC, classified aspartame as possibly carcinogenic to humans. Group 2B, specifically for hepatocellular carcinoma, which is a type of liver cancer. Group 2B is the third highest level out of 4 levels in total, and it is generally used when there is a limited but not convincing evidence for cancer in humans. However, both the joint FAO and WHO Expert Committee on Food Additives, or the JECFA, and the US Food and Drug Administration (FDA) have stated that evidence does not warrant changes to the established ADI for aspartame. Cardiovascular effects. Recent studies on rats have indicated that aspartame consumption might lead to an increase in insulin levels and inflammation, contributing to atherosclerosis, a condition when fatty plaques build up in the arteries, and elevated risks of heart attack and stroke. Researchers fed mice daily doses of food containing 0.15% of aspartame in 12 weeks, which is equivalent of consuming about 3 cans of Diet Coke each day for humans. Those mice develop larger and more fatty plaques in their arteries with higher levels of inflammation. Neurological effects. Aspartame consumption can lead to headaches and cognitive impairments. Microglia, which is the brain's primary immune cells, might be activated by aspartame byproducts such as aspartic acid or methanol, or even elevated phenylalanine levels. This can reduce tryptophan availability. Tryptophan is an amino acid needed for normal growth in infants and for the production of the body's proteins. This will impact the neurotransmitter production. In addition, increased glutamate from aspartame might lead to excitotoxic effects, causing the neuronal or glial cell damage. Metabolic effects. The World Health Organization, or WHO, has recommended against the use of non-sugar sweeteners, including aspartame, for weight control or reducing the risk of diseases. This recommendation is based on evidence suggesting that these sweeteners do not confer long-term benefits in reducing body fat and may have potentially undesirable effects, such as an increased risk of type 2 diabetes or cardiovascular diseases. Media and public opinion on aspartame. Aspartame has been a subject of public debate since its approval. Luckily, there is no mortality cases have been directly linked to the consumption of aspartame itself. However, concerns about its safety have led to widespread discussions and varying public opinions. Now let's take a look at some important milestones of aspartame. It was first discovered in the 1965. Around 10 years later, in the 1974, the US Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, initially approved aspartame for limited use with no set ADI levels. 7 years later, in the 1981, the FDA approved aspartame for use in dry goods. despite ongoing debates and criticism from some scientists and consumers at the time. The joint FAO and WHO Expert Committee on Food Additives, or the JECFA, also established the ADI level for aspartame in this year, which was 40 milligram per kilogram of body weight. After a decade in 1996, a study published by ONI suggested a potential link between aspartame consumption and an increase in brain tumors. Although the study was inconclusive, it fueled media speculation and public concern. In 2005, the European Ramazzini Foundation (ERF) released the study indicating a carcinogenic effect of aspartame in rats that I mentioned earlier. Media outlets reported extensively on these findings, leading to a reviewed public apprehension. However, both European Food Safety Authority (EFSA) and the French Food Safety Agency criticized the study's methodology and found no reason to change the existing guidelines. All the way to 2013, the EFSA conducted a comprehensive re-evaluation of aspartame's safety due to the public demand following the widespread concern, concluding that it posed no toxicity concern for consumers at the current ADI levels, which is 40 milligram per kilogram body weight. 2 years later, there was an interesting thing that had happened. In 2015, PepsiCo temporarily removed aspartame from the diet Pepsi due to declining sales since the early 2010s, as consumers associated artificial sweeteners with cancer and other health risks. Despite scientific consensus that aspartame is safe, PepsiCo responded by reformulating Diet Pepsi with sucralose or Splenda instead of aspartame, but only in the US, not in Canada. Customers disliked the taste of the new formula, so eventually in 2016, PepsiCo reinstated the original aspartame-based Diet Pepsi. In July 2023, this is when the International Agency for Research on Cancer, or the IARC, which is a subsidiary of World Health Organization, classified aspartame as possibly carcinogenic to humans. This classification was based on limited evidence and led to a mixed media reactions, reflecting both concern and skepticism. Public perception of aspartame varies. Some consumers choose to avoid products containing aspartame due to health concerns, while the others trust the regulatory assessment and continue to consume these products. Management approaches in Ontario and Canada. In Canada, aspartame is regulated as food additive under the Food and Drug Regulations. Health Canada is responsible for assessing the safety of food additives and establishing conditions for their uses. Health Canada has adopted an ADI for aspartame at 40 milligram per kilogram of body weight in the 1981 from the US FDA. In the Food and Drugs Act and Regulations in Canada, Section B16 002 requires manufacturers to file a food additive submission before any additive, including aspartame, is permitted for use. This submission must contain detailed safety tests and information regarding the additive's utility. There is also mandatory labeling requirements for products containing aspartame. Aspartame must be listed in milligrams per serving in the ingredient list of prepackaged foods. Foods containing aspartame must include a statement in bold font at the end of the ingredient list indicating that aspartame contains phenylalanine to inform individuals with phenylketonuria or PKU disease. However, there has been some changes made to the regulation in July 2020. As part of Health Canada's healthy eating strategy, amendments to the Food and Drug Act and regulations concerning the labeling of high-intensity sweeteners were published with compliance required by January 1st, 2026. These changes include removal of the requirements to list the amount of aspartame in milligrams per serving in the ingredient list. Feedback indicated that consumers found the milligram information confusing and not particularly useful for making informed choices. Secondly, elimination of the need to declare aspartame on the front of the package. The font of package declaration was deemed to be redundant, especially since aspartame is already listed in the ingredient list. Removing this requirement will streamline labeling without compromising consumer awareness. The phenylalanine warning will remain the same, and it will be placed at the end of the ingredient list and bolded. And that is the end of our presentation on aspartame. Thank you very much for your patience. I hope you guys enjoy the animation. And if I don't see you guys for the rest of the day, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.